If you feel unmotivated all the time, like you know what you should be doing, but you just don't feel like doing it, this might explain why. You think about starting, you tell yourself you will, but when the moment comes, you hesitate, you delay it, you put it off, and instead, you do something easier, something quicker, something that requires less effort. So you assume the problem is motivation, that you just don't have enough of it, that you need more discipline, more drive, more energy. But what if that's not the real issue? Because motivation doesn't just disappear. There's usually something underneath it. And most of the time, it comes down to overload. Because when your mind is overloaded, everything feels heavier, even simple tasks, even things you know you should do. Your brain looks at it and sees effort, pressure, resistance. So instead of moving towards it, you move away from it, towards something easier, something that gives you instant relief. And that's where distraction comes in. Scrolling, watching something, doing anything that avoids the effort. Not because you don't care, but because your brain is trying to reduce pressure. Another reason you feel unmotivated is because everything feels too big, too unclear, too overwhelming. When your brain doesn't know exactly where to start, it hesitates because uncertainty creates resistance. And resistance feels like a lack of motivation, but it's not. It's confusion. That's why clear, simple tasks feel easier to start, and vague, complex ones feel impossible, even if they're important. Another thing that affects your motivation is constant stimulation. Your brain is used to quick rewards, fast entertainment, instant feedback. So when something doesn't give you that, it feels less appealing, less engaging, less worth doing, and your brain resists it. Not because it's difficult, but because it's not immediately rewarding. That's why you can spend hours on your phone, but struggle to start something that actually matters. Because one gives instant reward, and the other requires effort before reward, and your brain naturally chooses the easier option. Another reason motivation drops is because you've lost momentum. When you stop doing something for a period of time, it becomes harder to start again. Not because you can't, but because there's no movement behind it, no progress, no continuation. So your brain treats it like something new, something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things require more effort to start. That's why the longer you leave something, the harder it feels to begin. And that resistance builds day after day until it feels like you've completely lost motivation. But in reality, you've just lost momentum. And momentum is what makes things feel easier. Because when you're already moving, it takes less effort to keep going. Another thing that plays a role in this is emotional disconnect. When you're constantly busy, constantly distracted, constantly overloaded, you lose connection with why you're doing things. You stop thinking about the bigger picture, the reason behind your actions, what you actually want. And without that connection, everything starts to feel meaningless. Tasks feel empty, effort feels pointless, and that creates a lack of motivation. Not because you're lazy, but because you're disconnected. You're doing things without feeling connected to them. And that removes the drive behind action. So even simple things feel harder than they should. So what's the solution? It's not waiting for motivation, because motivation follows action, not the other way around. Instead, focus on making things easier to start, smaller, clearer, more manageable. Remove the pressure, remove the expectation of doing
Uno,
everything,
sì,
and just begin. Because once you
set.
start, your brain shifts. It stops resisting and starts engaging. Another thing that helps is reducing the constant input, because the more overloaded your mind is, the less energy you have to take action. So give your brain space, less noise, less distraction, more clarity. And when your mind is clearer, your motivation starts to return. Another powerful shift is rebuilding momentum. Start small, something simple, something you can complete, and then do it again. Because every time you take action, you create movement. And that movement builds momentum. And momentum reduces resistance, which makes the next step easier and the next, until things no longer feel as heavy. So if you've been feeling unmotivated lately, it's probably not because you're lazy. It's because your mind is overloaded. Your tasks feel too big. You've lost momentum and you've become disconnected from what you're doing. Fix that and your motivation comes back.